Hello and welcome to Spring Office Hours, Season 3, Episode 16, Spring AI and Google Gemini. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun. DaShaun, how you doing, my friend?
I'm having a wonderful day. It's been a good few weeks,
Yeah.
and we had a good weekend, and we always get new toys to play with, and that's fun for me. We
Yeah.
get to build things for the purpose of building things, for the purpose of trying out new things. We get to do the things that you shouldn't be doing. You should not be just trying out new stuff just to take it to production, just to learn about. We'll do that for you, and then we'll show you how to use it and when to use it. But I love what we do. I love my job.
Yeah, we get to explore a fun little topic today. So I've been working a lot in Spring AI lately. I've been doing a lot of demos, tutorials, videos, and just kind of diving into like the different aspects of like building intelligent applications, right? And this is something new for me today. So we're going to talk with our good friend Dan. We'll introduce him in a little bit. We're going to talk about Google Gemini. And so when I build a lot of these demos, I haven't been using Gemini, but I know that like I want to take advantage of the different LLMs for what they bring to the table. And I think just talking about that today, like talking about using another LLM, what are some of the features there? What are the integrations? Why we should reach for that? I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm interested in learning more today. And yeah, I'm a little selfish. Sometimes we plan these shows and it's like, yeah, that's what I want to learn. So hopefully other people want to learn.
Well,
that
this is the thing that I wish that I had when I was, doing development, when I was a contributor. And that's part of the magic. This is still my favorite time of the week. My parents are still watching every episode. So when you join the chat, you're joining us live, let us know where you're joining from. Tell us where you're from. Say hi. That's always appreciated. I love you, Mom and Dad. But yeah, this is my favorite time of the week. I really enjoy this show. And we get really lucky because everybody's talking about AI. It's a thing. I think it's going to, catch on. And now we're starting to finally see some of these really beyond the academic use cases. We're starting to see how it's being used and how it's being leveraged. And it's an exciting time. It's a great time to be a Spring developer. And yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff coming ahead.
Somebody on my YouTube channel told me to stop making videos on AI because it was too niche. I was like, wait a minute. What? It is what it is. All right. Yeah. So I think what I want to do, I'm going to jump in real quick. We just have two things to share, and then we'll bring on our guests and jump into our topic at hand. I have this here, which is calendar.spring.io. This is where you should be looking to find out what is going on in the Spring ecosystem, what releases are happening. We're down here on April 29th. We see some Spring Cloud functions. RC1 for Catalog 5.0 has been released. We have some stream applications, STS this week. What I wanted to focus on, since we're here at the release calendar, is if you look at next week, on the 8th, Spring AI 1.0.0 release candidate 1. So that's pretty exciting. But if you jump into May, I see a Spring AI 1.0 release on the 15th. Now, again, sometimes these things move, but this is what's on the calendar for right now. So we're going to stick to that, and which means we would have something before we go to Spring I/O and Barcelona, which we are both going to be at. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see everybody in Barcelona, Spain. The last time I was there, it was kind of cold out. So I'm looking forward to some good weather in Barcelona.
I'm a big fan. Things are going to happen in Barcelona.
Oh yeah, things are going to happen. Maybe a live version of this podcast. Who knows?
I'm hearing rumors. It sounds like it's going to happen.
Okay, so that's the release calendar. Again, if you want to stay caught up with our releases, check out calendar.spring.io. Something big is coming up this week. We are already talking about Spring 1 at VMware Explore in Las Vegas. That happens in August. But what happens this week? Down here, it says interested in presenting, submit your Spring story by May 3rd, which I know happens to be Friday because it's also my daughter's birthday. So I know that is happening Friday. So you have till Friday to get those proposals in. Man, that's coming up quick, DaShaun. I know you are putting some talks together. I'm still scrambling to figure out what talks I want to submit. So we got to get those in this week.
Yeah, we have from now we have 5,000 minutes, give or
Oof,
take.
not enough.
So it depends on which way you're looking at it, right? Do you have it figured out and you just need to like type it out and do the submit? If so, you have 5,000 minutes to do that. But if you haven't really picked and haven't fine-tuned, here's the thing I want to give you a little heads up. The submission that you sent to all your other conferences, or if this is your first one, you only have 850 characters. So you have to condense it. You got to trim it down a little bit. What you send regular, what I normally send, doesn't fit in 850 characters. So this is your heads up. You have 5,000 minutes, give or take, to get this in. I want to see you.
And I do want to talk about something real quick, because we are talking on the subject of AI today, and I will be part of the group that is reviewing these abstracts. So one thing I would say is use AI to your benefit of like, hey, generate me some ideas of titles and descriptions. Ideas. Do not verbatim copy the result and paste this in as your abstract, because nobody wants to read those. You can start to pick up on machine code descriptions. Like they're pretty easy to pick up on. Delve.
Delve.
Yeah. Nobody uses
a popular word this week. Delve.
Yeah. So just it's not a rule, but hey, just a suggestion. Use AI to your advantages when like brainstorming, but let's not just copy verbatim what is coming out of there. So cool. All right. So before we bring in our guest, again, this is a live stream that we do every Monday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. If you are here in the live stream, please do us a favor and get your questions in. We'll have a very special guest on here. Hopefully we can answer some of those questions today. If you're not on the live stream, you can go ahead and listen to this on the podcast. We turn this live stream into a podcast, which will come out Tuesday morning if we're recording on Monday. And you can get that podcast wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get those from. So with that, what I'm going to do is bring on our special guest. I'm going to go ahead and remove this and go here and bring to the stage the one and only Mr. Dan Dobrin. Dan, how are you doing today?
Excellent. Nice to see you, gentlemen.
Awesome to see you. Dan is ex-Pivotal. So we were just talking beforehand, right kind of when I joined VMware, Dan had left just a few months prior to that. So yeah. For anyone who doesn't know you, Dan, can you just give us a little rundown of who you are, what you do, and what you're doing at your current role?
I'm coming from Pivotal, then VMware, then Google Cloud. I'm an app architect. I'm on the North American technology team. I have the great privilege of working with a lot of customers across a lot of industries. My focus is on bridging the last mile from a platform to a running workload. Like Josh Long likes to say, production is his most favorite place. Well, I also want to see workloads running in production. I'm coming from the app side of things over the years. I've built even once with some friends a microservice framework, tried to pitch it against Spring, and we're back into the Spring world, obviously. Something didn't really work out there. But I'm interested a lot in serverless optimization, and in the last couple of years, a lot on AI and what AI can help an enterprise customer. And what we do as developers, we like to look at things great, but how can we put them in production? How can we use them and build some real apps?
Awesome. So when we talk about AI, a lot of the hype over the last couple of years has been on generative AI and working with large language models. Today, we're talking about Google Gemini. So for those who haven't had a chance to kind of work with Google Gemini before, can you just kind of talk about it at a high level and maybe some features of like why you might want to reach for one LLM over another like Google Gemini?
Yeah. Please excuse the side effects of a flu. It happens. So Gemini, which was launched at the end of the year and keeps evolving, is Google's most advanced and capable AI model. It is designed to be multimodal, so it can understand and generate text and code and images and video. It is the successor to the earlier models Lambda and PaLM 2, which you might have seen in the last few years.
Mhm.
It comes in different sizes. You can run them from, you can have different version, and it has also a separate model called Gemma, which is an open model which you could run in different sizes on your machine if you want.
Oh, nice.
This is big for me. I like running things on Raspberry Pis. Dan, you and I have this build pack experience running things on ARM64 architecture. So yeah, I like to run things over here on my Raspberry Pis, and having Gemma as a companion model to Gemini, that's nice for me. I enjoy
Yeah,
it.
and now Spring AI added test container support. So with an Olama container, you can build a local Gemma 2 billion or 7 billion image, commit it, and use it. However,
That's
Gemini brings a lot of other features.
Can we see what's the difference? Gemma locally versus Gemini in Google.
So if
level.
I can share my screen for a second.
Yeah.
So if we look at Gemini, there are two aspects to Gemini. One is the Gemini models, but Gemini is also a brand which incorporates a number of things, amongst others, code assistance and cloud assistance. So Gemini as a model, the latest model 1.5, which is available in preview for everybody to try out, is a multimodal model with a super large context window, 1 million tokens. So literally, you can take an entire book or an entire video and feed it to it. Gemma is an open model, a state-of-the-art model, and you can use that in smaller, like 2 billion or 7 billion variants. You can run them on your machine, but you can run them as well deployed in Kubernetes or in Cloud Run in a serverless environment, as you like and host. Now, the Gemini models are all supported in Vertex AI. Vertex AI is a full platform which is built on Google's AI infrastructure, runs on Google Cloud. You can run models, foundation models of your choice, like Gemini 1.0, which is released, 1.5, which is in preview. But you can also add fine-tuned models. You can have specific models. You can add them. You can select more than 130 models in the model garden, but you can find them and add yourself. So
that's really cool.
I want to back up a sec. Maybe I'm new to AI. All right, there's a lot of these numbers and values that are thrown around. The first one that we talked about was the 1 million tokens. I know that as I'm exploring and I'm doing things, I know that I've ran into limits. It says, hey, that's too big. Try asking again. Or, hey, I can't parse that, etc. I'm running into these limits. Is that where the 1 million tokens fits in?
Yes, it does. And if we want to see this in action, we can take, for example, a book, Jungle Book, which we might all be familiar with from our childhood. And we can ask in one single request, we can ask, like, have a prompt, like, as an experienced literary critic, please summarize this book and no
so
more
you're
than
feeding in the whole book,
the entire book, and it's from Gutenberg project, so that we can use it without any copyright issues. So if once I paste it, it has 71 roughly thousand tokens, which we can run, and it might give or take 15 seconds, and it will summarize the entire book as we ask for it.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty slick. I know that one of the experiments that I've done is like, hey, I want to transcribe one of our shows, and I want to summarize a show that we've done from the transcription. And I've ran into limits just on that. I assume that our 1 hour show would fit into 1 million tokens, and that just makes me smile.
And not only that, oh yeah, go ahead.
You see it streaming, the response is back, the 5 bullet points, and we asked also for a recommendation. It's a timely classic. filled with adventures and life lessons.
So, just kind of piggybacking off of that conversation, DaShaun, there is the Gemini.google.com, which is like the chat interface, right? So this is I can go in and type stuff. Then there are the models that you are using behind the scenes. Maybe the chat is currently using whatever the latest one is. I think you said 1.5 Pro or whatever it was. So those models, I know I've done this with other LLMs. Now, can I use the model itself directly? Is there like a REST API on the model? Or how do I take advantage of just using that without the chat interface?
So at its basic form, there is a REST API. There is a REST API, and it has you have a REST API. You can use that API, and that's fine. You can build your apps.
Cool.
For us as developers, we want IDE support. We want to build an SDK, and we want to have an SDK to help us build applications quickly and reliably. What do we care in the enterprise? Reliability, safety, understanding. So there is, for Gemini, there is a Java SDK, which is available. So for a developer, all you have to do is use that. Furthermore, Google has a set of client libraries for interactions. When we build an application in the cloud, none of them exist in a vacuum. Each one uses some data, some messaging system, some other service. So there is a set of Java client libraries, which includes the Vertex SDK, and you have support for all of them in both JIT as well as native Java.
Awesome. One of the things that I really enjoyed when I was just kind of testing this out, getting ready for this show, is if you go over to Gemini.google.com, there are a couple of things I really like about this. One, there are these extensions, and it has like really close collaboration with all the different products within Google. So DaShaun, there is an extension for YouTube. So you could say, hey, at YouTube, here's this video. Can you write me a summary or give me 10 bullet points about it? Or some links that were mentioned throughout the show that we can kind of pull back in. So I really like that aspect.
I think I saw somebody do an example of it automatically chopping it up into chapters.
Oh, nice.
Well,
yeah. That would be cool. The other thing I really love about it is it has some examples of things that you can ask it, like different prompts. And so this got my wheels turning. We talk a lot about like one of the things when it comes to LLMs is like being able to effectively communicate and try to get out of it what you need. Otherwise is known as prompt engineering, right? And you can kind of reverse engineer those. You can like click on those and see what the prompt is that it's writing out to kind of ask that query. And I think just seeing those, like that helps me learn a little bit more about how to effectively communicate. So those were two features of the Gemini.google.com app that I really enjoyed.
There are two add-on to Gemini and how it helps you. One is for the developer, but as we're here on the console, and we are here in the Google console, we have Gemini support for the cloud. So we have this assistant, which is unique, as in supports you at every step of the way, regardless where you are in the console. So you can ask it questions like, please show me how to add my own model to the model garden. And it will give you a step-by-step aspect. I typed a few here. What is the token length in Gemini? So it will tell you it's up to a million token.
Nice.
Why is a streaming call to Vertex faster than a blocking call? Something which for us as developers, we want to know. And not just that, it also wants to give me a sample. And in the Java world, it defaulted to Python, but I can ask, can you show me a Java example? Well, right away.
Nice.
The other one, the developer in the IDE, where you have an assistant as well.
Yep. So speaking of the developer, one of the things I've been talking a lot about lately with some of these LLMs is, as we just talked about, there is a REST API interface, and we can just call these REST APIs and in normal Java code and normal Spring code, however we need to. But as we start to build these applications out, we're going to realize that we're going to run into some problems that we have to solve for, right? Things like, hey, I need to like create some effective prompts. I need to take the response from the LLM and parse that into something that can be useful in my application. I may need the ability to bring my own data. So whether it's stuffing the prompt or RAG or calling a function, like being able to kind of augment the LLMs. And this is where Spring AI comes in and really helps us out. I've been a big fan of Spring AI and just how easy it is to get started with. So I'm guessing we have some nice integrations here with Spring AI and Google Gemini.
Oh, absolutely. And if we sync, the SDK is always more verbose. It will allow you to, it's the fastest feedback. As soon as functionality is available, SDK is published, so you can start building it. But if we look at something like function calling, I have to write a lot more code. It is true, I have the utmost precision in every single tuning parameter. But as a developer, do I want to do that? So I need the level of abstraction which something like Gemini, which something like Spring AI will build. Instead of that code, I can write only that much to make a call to Gemini and, for example, use function call with an example with some financial transactions. So this Spring AI will help us as developers a lot in terms of the productivity. In a lot, plus it's the programming model we are used to. It's an extension, natural extension to Spring and Spring Boot. If we are accustomed to it, it is easy for us to upskill.
So if I go over to start.spring.io and I'm building a web app and I want to include Spring AI with Google Gemini and I pick Google Gemini there, what's like my next step? Like where do I'm guessing I have to like create an account somewhere and like get an API key to talk to one of these models. What's that process like?
So yes, you need to have an account, and you need to have an account, and you can authorize your credentials as a developer from the command line against a project which is enabled in the Google Cloud. Alternatively, you can create a service account, export that key, and use a service account in lieu of providing credentials.
Cool. And where do we get those keys? Is that I don't think I have a link for that, so I want to make sure I put a link in the show notes for folks to get started with that.
All you would have to do is you would just have to log in with credentials. We can
Okay, so just on Google Cloud and then
on Google Cloud, and,
Cloud okay,
and that's all we want to do.
Perfect. I will go ahead and get that in the show notes so folks know. So I have an API key and I have Spring AI talking to Gemini. I can do all of the things, again, one of the things I've loved about Spring AI lately is you can kind of switch these models out, right? All the code we're writing is an abstraction for talking to these LLMs. So if I have one application that's talking to one LLM, maybe I can change that out and talk to Google Gemini and see if I get better results or more, or the results are tailored a little bit more to what I'm trying to get out of that LLM.
Yes,
so DaShaun, I know.
Spring AI supports that in two ways. One in the configuration, which is in our application properties, or you can specify it per request in the Spring AI calls.
Awesome. DaShaun, I know you talk a lot about that. Not trying to like stick to one of these LLMs, and kind of doing a little bit of
different
trying
LLMs have different strengths. One of the other things we talked about was with Gemma, the 2B versus 7B. Can you explain that? It looks to me like it's really just kind of in the size of the model that I get. But what does that 2B versus 7B mean?
The size of the model, a smaller model, like 2B, you can make that available in a more memory constrained environment. We have to think that an image built like a 2B model might take maybe 2 megs. 2 gigs on your machine, whereas the 7B, which would be a larger model, would take maybe around like 6 gigs in your environment.
And the other thing that you mentioned was Gemini is multi-model. So I can ask Gemini for different things, and I can have these kind of different models built into Gemini. So instead of me doing the work to deliver different models behind my Spring Cloud Gateway, I can kind of do the same thing. I can have Gemini delivering these different models. How do I interact with the different models within Gemini?
So you can interact via the SDK, and you can start, for example, from as little as taking an image of a book cover, use the Gemini model to extract for you what you are requesting. I want, for example, the title and the author. Extract them, and based on that, I can continue. Dan mentioned the RAG. So one example of like an advanced RAG is we start from little information and we keep on adding. We can retrieve a summary, which we might already have, or we can ask the LLM to provide for us a review of this book, but even find the availability in a bookstore or in a library. So we interact with it with a Vertex SDK or directly with Spring AI.
Yeah, and from a Spring AI perspective, just going through some of this myself, there is support for Gemini embeddings. So if you are, like you said, if you had a PDF and you wanted to take that and turn that into vectors and store it in a vector database, Spring AI has support for that. So I just wanted to kind of point that out.
Yes, one of the features which you have to take into consideration if you look at Vertex. And here, this is a link from the Cloud Architecture Center, where we published the infrastructure for a RAG-capable Gen AI application using Vertex, but running in a serverless environment. There is one for GK as well. So one of the major advantages is when you're dealing with embeddings, what would you do if you would have separate environments? You would have to pick an embedding model, create embeddings, get the embeddings, store them separately. However, Vertex AI has an integration between every single Google Cloud database has it. But in the example, when the one I presented at Google Cloud Next a couple of weeks ago, and it matches this reference architecture, AlloyDB, which is a Postgres implementation, works behind the scenes, is integrated with Vertex AI. Therefore, you write a simple insert, and it takes care of the embeddings for you and stores them. So you can store your enterprise data and your vector data both in the same place. That means one administration. For a developer, all I do is write an insert, and this is where we are. If we look at the database, for us, inserting is all but a plain insert, and we specify the embedding model, so it will handle it behind the scenes, and it works on Google's backbone. A lot simpler for us to maintain and for us as developers to access.
Yep, that's awesome.
And then how does Vertex AI relate to Gemini?
So Vertex AI, in Vertex AI, we can pick different models. So we can choose from the model garden the model we want to use. For example, in here, we picked one of the foundation models, which is readily available to us. But if we like, we can add other models, or we can fine-tune an existing model and add it in here. If we would like to host it ourselves in a serverless or a Kubernetes environment, we can do so as well. So Vertex exists as an integrated system, but it has also an SDK which exposes it to us as developers.
Got it.
So you just got me thinking of something. One of the things I was playing around with for a tutorial was I created. So we know that LLMs have like a finite set of training data. There's a cutoff date for it, right? Things like product documentation. So we have a bunch of projects. We have documentation that is not always up to date if you just ask the public chats, right? So I created a little app that integrates with like the Spring Boot reference PDF documentation, so it's now up to date. One of the things I said in that video is one of the things you could do is fine tune a model, but if you're a developer, that may not be easy. Are you telling me from Vertex AI, it's a little bit easier to fine tune a model, or is there still a lot of, do you still have to know how that works and be in that world?
You always, let's have a think about this. Foundation models are limited in time, right?
Yep.
They have a time limit. Now, if we fine tune a model and we can bring a number, add some data to it, they also have the time when we fine tune that model. So let's say
Yep.
if a foundation model is January 1st and we fine tuned it February 1st, it is limited at that time. So we
Yep.
want to augment that data with a retrieval augmented generation process so that
Yep.
we can have private data, which could be separate in our vault, data locality, secure. We have different data regional aspects to it.
Yep.
We want to have that. We want to have timely information, and we want to have the precision at which we access the data.
Yep. Yep. It's great that there are all these different ways that we can kind of augment that communication. So
yes, and we can also think that we want to offload a number of operations. Operations are many time consuming. You see, it summarizes a book, but it might take 15 seconds or 20 seconds or 10 seconds. However, we don't want to repeat that summarization all the time. So we want to store that information in an offline process, like batch or asynchronous at night, when the SLA for a service are less stringent than they are in a regular direct access, where the SLA and the user experience matters.
I love how we're talking about AI, and it always comes back to batch, right? If we're doing this, right, when we're talking about the enterprise, there are systems in place, batches, holding up the world, but even at the forefront of technology here in the AI conversation, we're still going to use batch to feed these models, to feed these fine tunings and create these embeddings for our infrastructure, for our enterprise data.
What we have learned in the enterprise is not going to the wayside. We're just adding to the knowledge.
Yeah.
But good practices are good practices. Learning how to program in Java or any other language, or learning how to use Spring is not wasted. We're just adding new features to it.
Yeah, and you said you get to work with a lot of different enterprise companies, right? What are you hearing out there? I mean, I know what we're hearing. What we talk to, a lot of different customers as well, and AI is not just a buzzword anymore. Like teams are being asked to build intelligent applications, right? Like, what are the conversations you're having out there?
The main conversation, which is the realization for every customer, business needs will drive Gen AI adoption, not technological aspects. In the enterprise, I have a set of operations a set of business operations I need to do. Now I need to solve them in a novel way, or I need to solve them in a way which I just couldn't do before, like summarization of a document, or analysis of an image, and then continuing a business process. Imagine ingesting documents in like PDF, HTML, text format. All these features are coming into play. Now, what are customers building? There are a lot of variety of services, but every enterprise has data, and enterprises want to use that data. They want to have access to it. They want to have privacy to it, and they're looking at building applications which should leverage that enterprise data.
That one word stuck out there for me, which was privacy, right? I'm sure customers are having concerns about if I'm working in the cloud and I want to bring my own data. These are my project specs, my project documentation that isn't public, and I want the LM to have access to this. How does that work in the cloud? How do we keep those documents private?
So what we do is we ingest all the documents, all our private documents, and we store the embeddings in a private repository, same as we store the enterprise data. The same data residency and security requirements apply to embedded data, embeddings, as well as regular data.
Awesome.
And databases support that, whether it's PG vector added to Postgres or now Firestore or NoSQL having access to it. So the same privacy requirements remain in place. Their enterprises wouldn't do that. When we retrieve embeddings, then we can feed some of the information we want to the LLM to build for us the response we have. But we have the control of the data where it is and nobody else does.
That's great to hear. Hey, so if you're in the live chat and you have questions, what are you waiting for? Let's get those questions in. We'll see if we can get them answered. I know we have a lot of people here, so that's great to see that everybody showed up.
I've got questions, Dan.
All right.
What are some of these use cases? I'm also getting to enjoy time with customers. Some of the recent interesting ones where customers doing a summary of their meetings. And not only that, they're assigning action items. So whatever they're doing, they realize like, hey, there's 3 of us on the call and we've assigned Dan Vega to do the show notes and make sure that the links get into the show notes, but they're doing that automatically. Another one was they're measuring things on the manufacturing floor. Right? They have these AI models that are doing things close to the work that's being done. And this whole conversation has me thinking about all of our customers that are using Google Cloud. And with the Spring AI integration, I feel like there's going to be not just these kind of like one-off use cases, but I feel like there's going to be some more bigger capabilities that are coming. What are the interesting things that, if you haven't seen it yet, that you expect to see soon? Tell me some interesting use cases.
Well, a lot of, as you're mentioning, many people, many customers ingest documents. So documents could be, for example, invoices, could be your own user manuals in whatever industry you are. You could be ingesting, I don't know, from book reviews for our fictitious example, but you might as well be ingesting car manuals, or you might as well have credit, let's say mortgage, for example, rules of usage, or different types of documents in different formats. You can take some of those type of examples and use them, but the majority of cases will involve a lot of private data, because you want to leverage, again, we're in the enterprise, you want to leverage the enterprise data.
Yeah, one of the examples I saw, I guess just kind of popped up. If you go to gemini.google.com, again, there's those extensions, and some of those can dive into Google Workspace. So if your company uses Workspace and you have like Google and Google Chat and Google Calendar and Mail and all that, you could start asking it questions about that. And you could say, hey, give me some emails and chats around this particular topic, if you wanted to like draw from that. I wonder, are those available like through the API as well, or is that simply something that you do from the chat interface?
So there's, if we look at Google's portfolio for GenAI, you have the GenAI for builders and the one for users, and all runs on the Google Cloud infrastructure. So for users, you have Gemini for cloud, which we just so you can ask it a question, it will be an assistant. You can have it for Google Workspace, where it's integrated with several of the services and you can ask the different questions. On the other hand, for builders, you have Vertex AI, because now you want to interact with, build Gen AI applications and interact with the different models or the different services which are available to you. So there's this distinction between it.
Cool. Well, I'm learning a lot today, DaShaun. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I've got more. I'm very interested in, there's still a bunch here. What are the main things? Like when you're onboarding somebody, like, hey, these are the things that you've got to see, that you've got to understand about Gemini, and here's how easy it is to use. Give me, what are the top 3 things that you want to make sure that everybody understands about Gemini and why they should be choosing Gemini or Gemma if they want to run it locally? What are the top 3?
Well, from an enterprise perspective, I'm looking at how easy is it as a user to use on my entire stack. Conversely, now putting that's my Noogler hat. I'm not a Noogler anymore. As a Google architect, I'm looking at how can I give the easiest onboarding pass to a customer. So having the entire infrastructure available from the cloud to the AI infrastructure, to the databases and messaging systems, to the different compute engines, whether it's containerized in Kubernetes or in serverless or functions, to the SDK to access that is for me very important because I can handle it. I'm looking at one pane of glass, which is, for example, my console. Sure, we will not configure anything in the console for a production environment, but I'm looking at one pane of glass and I can view my entire infrastructure. I can see my applications and I can see where they're running. Having these integrations between like a database and Vertex precludes me from doing a lot of work. It brings predictability. It saves me a lot of management and a lot of upskilling. That would be the absolute top one. Having having features like a large context model. Should you always use a large context model? No, it's not. You're not that you're going to use that. You might not even use the same LLM each time. You want to apply the right tool for the right, the right hammer for the right nail. So you want to have the flexibility, but if you need it, you need to be able to do that. And you want to open possibilities because it's not that you think about something, then maybe I need a request for more features. No, if I have these available, it gives me more imagination of how I can solve an enterprise problem.
It's better to have it and not need it than it is to not have it and need it.
So imagine this. Here's the image. I want, for example, my summary. What if the summary is not available in the database? Should I build my application to go and try and find that, let the LLM resolve it? Or should I say, I'm sorry, I don't have this. I'm going to leave this response empty. So I want to have this flexibility always.
Yep.
And I want to do it as simple as possible with a model which I can understand.
Cool. I'm just checking.
Cool.
Do we have any questions in the chat?
Not questions, but then I'll do my reminder. Remember, if you come to my house for dinner and you leave hungry, that's your fault. Spring office hours, we do it live. We have the chat. If you're here live and you've got questions, both Dans are here. They're brilliant. They can go deep on this stuff. If you've got questions, like what could Spring AI do for me? If you've got questions, now's the time to ask. Don't leave hungry. Get your questions asked.
Dan, I will ask.
Thanks. I'm going to say thanks to Jitter Ted for answering questions in the chat.
Awesome.
We don't always do it here live, but ask your question in the chat because we've got a great community there. And thanks, Ted and Thomas, for answering questions.
Dan, I wanted to bring up, you did give a presentation recently at Google Next. What was that presentation? And can you talk about some of the features that were maybe announced at Google Next?
Well, we had a presentation on roll up your sleeves, like craft real world Gen AI applications. Where we wanted to go with my colleague Yanni, he's on the same team with me. We wanted to explore what does it take for us to build a real use case. So even if it's our fictitious university bookstore, we wanted to see what would an enterprise need. It's not just maybe a few small things. So it explored multiple aspects. One was ingesting documents at scale. And we started from an ask for new features. And those features could not be solved with existing cloud architectures or cloud services. So we needed AI services. Things like ingesting documents, summarizing them at scale, building embeddings, storing them. start from a text and we want a semantic analysis of a book or a set of books by different keywords. How do these keywords come into play? The other one is we start from an image. How do we add information? Like you would go to a bookstore, we visit, I see a book on your coffee table, I take a picture. Could be interesting. What am I expecting out of that? I expect a summary. I expect where I can get it with availability, and I want to look into that. Like we explored the idea of I need new business features, and I have to solve them because I cannot solve them with the technology of yesterday. So I need today's technology. In terms of what we announced, there were many announcements in terms of Gemini, but the important thing is and I'll put my developer hat on. Anything I do as a developer, I feel supported. Whether I write my code and I have code assist, I can ask it questions, I can have it generate code for me. It's my friendly helper. It's like we would do pair programming, and we want that. And it's adaptive. It learns from how we work. An interesting feature there is that you can point it, and it will be available like for everybody to use. Retrieval augmented generation in code assist, so you can use it again your own code base. So it can.
Oh, that's awesome.
It can recommend things in your code base, or I can say with a million token context window, take that entire repository and give me a recommendation based on that. So that will be available. If I'm move into the console, I can have a helper all the time, and I can see how do I do this? How do I add this? I don't know. I don't want to start searching. I want this to, I want it to remember what I'm asking. And then when I build the application, I want to access all these features in a programmatic way. So I feel like Gemini is kind of like, I have Gemini in my back pocket as a developer in whatever I'm trying to do.
You brought up a case that I've heard a lot of customers, and they're not sharing all their secrets, but I've heard a lot of those conversations about what is our best practice in our organization. Here's our code base, and they want to kind of pull some of that out. They want to be able to say, hey, given this code, given this requirement, based on our code base, what should we do? Right? Which models, which common utils out of our organization would be used? Give us an example and do those things against our own code. I've heard that conversation many times pre-Spring AI, but that's something that's kind of come forward, and now we're hearing it a lot more.
That is a feature which is available in Google Code Assist, and it is very interesting because imagine like an enterprise with tens or hundreds of developers. They build best practices. They build libraries. They have cross-cutting concerns which are shared. Let's say for how do I mask PII data? How do I audit business data for 7 years? I want to reuse those, but how would I know about it? Well, if I can point my friendly assistant to do it, then I can go and leverage that, and with full privacy.
Yeah, I would point it at my repositories and say, don't write code like this. Take a look at Spencer Gibbs' GitHub repository.
How do I make
and let me write code
more like Spencer's?
Like Spencer's. Yes.
This I understand that. I feel you. Thank you for your transparency. This is what I want to do too. I want to ask this model. One of the things, like, let's talk about the kind of other side, right? AI was getting it's on a ride. We're on a journey all together. But a lot of other services where developers are asking for help, and they're sending like, hey, given this data, given my data, maybe my company's proprietary data, help me. And we've heard a couple of stories, whispers in the hallway tracks where customers were putting their proprietary code out on Stack Overflows and other AIs, and they were sending it out in the cloud. How do customers protect themselves in this world of AI? We've talked about having it local. Hey, keep it here. We're good. But I imagine that there's some way in Google that I could still have all the benefits and power of Gemini and Vertex AI and all the things that are in that the model garden. How do I get that? But I don't want to share all my data. I want to be able to use it, but I don't want to share all my data. What does that look like?
Well, if we look at that things, the 4 tenets for the enterprise was from the beginning when Gemini was announced: data governance, privacy, and indemnification with Google Cloud. The second one was security and compliance support, because many customers are in regulated industry. It could be healthcare, financial, government, whatever. Then the infrastructure reliability and sustainability, which the cloud offers to you, and also the responsible AI. So the Google commitment of your privacy. So nobody reads your data, nobody uses your data, to put it in plain English, and respecting also by the project in which you are using it, the data locality. Maybe you have GDPR in Europe. We don't have the same requirements in North America. So all of those are respected from the beginning.
That's awesome. And then, go ahead, Dan. You had something?
No, I saw a couple of questions that were starred. So.
Oh yeah. Before I go to those, for years, right? It's kind of, again, whispers, hallway track conversations. If you want to do AI, you were kind of leaning into Google, but it was different. It wasn't the GPT. It wasn't the generative AI. It was all about the tensors and vision and all those kind of things. Do I still get those? Are they still popular? And can I tie these together?
Yes, you can use, for example, one of the samples we have, you can use the Vision API, which is a machine learning model available to you. It's available. We have it in Code Labs. I wrote one. I think that was my first Code Lab I wrote when I joined. It is a machine learning model. I have an API. I can specify all the requirements: safety, don't give me harmful responses, inappropriate responses. But I can use also now, for example, Gemini multimodal, and extract the image. If I would put an inappropriate one, either one would flag them. So the services are available to you, and there are different programming models. Yes.
And that's one of the things that I'm excited about leaving this conversation today. You said I can go into Vertex AI and almost create like a shopping list. Like, these are the different models that I want to include, and just take advantage of all of them and not have to set them all up. They're all just kind of right there for me.
When you add a model, let's say a model of your choice, if we use one of the foundation models, which the Spring AI team, for example, by default, they link to Gemini Pro. It has a specific endpoint. Now, if you add a model to the model garden and the model of your choice, what do you get? You get a URL, and you will access that URL, same as you would do with the sample we have here. It's as simple as that. And that's why you want Spring AI to help you with all this plumbing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Here's a good question from the audience. Is there a good translate module, perhaps from any language to like a custom DSL?
Google Translate module, to be specific.
Yeah. Google Translate. Can I do that?
Let me,
is that in the garden? Google Translate?
So that sounds...
Of Google, the traveling that we do get to do, Google Translate. Wow.
Yeah.
That's been amazing for me.
There is translation AI. I can, all you have to do is just search for translation AI in Google Cloud. And it will help you translate documents, website, applications, audio files, videos at scale.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's you can try it out, and it has an API if you want to access it as well.
You brought up, you just mentioned like audio. I know again, just from the people that I care about hanging out with and want to get better, like Craig, our friend Craig Walls, the audio API, right? This is another kind of popular bucket of workloads around AI and text to speech and speech to text, the transcription. Thoughts, opinions,
So in
secrets?
the Vertex SDK, you can do text to speech, for example. But on the other hand, Spring AI, for the time being, does not have. I think Craig mentioned it a couple of
It's
months
open.
ago.
If you look at the 1.0 spec, the
Yeah,
snapshot docs, the text to speech, translation, transcription, that's included in there.
in
So
1.0.
in
Yep.
the 1.0.
Okay.
So yeah, stay
that,
tuned.
Look, it's
coming.
work in progress. So what we like is that with the 1.0 snapshot, so 1.0 snapshot is stable week after week.
Yep.
I use 081 for Google Maps, but I use 10 ever since. It is stable and the features are there. Will it evolve? Yes, of course it's going to be evolved. But that's what we want. The thing which we have to be cognizant here first, and that goes for Spring AI and for every library. We made the analogy, and I think you guys made the analogy with Spring Data.
Always, I always do.
With Spring Data, if you have SQL, it's a bit simpler because you have a standard. In the AI world, there is no standard per se. So the effort will be on the community as well for all of us to contribute, whether you're on the Spring side or whether we're on the cloud side or anybody in the community, to help out with the integration, because it's going to be easy for a developer in the end, but it's also on us to make that happen under the hood.
Yeah. The use cases and the models and the conventions, the patterns that we're going to use, those are going to evolve over time. Just like with Spring Data, right? Where everything was SQL at first, and then NoSQL came along, and Spring Data was like, hey, here's your NoSQL options for all of these other data stores. And just like with Spring AI going from 0.8.1 to the 1.0.0 snapshot, I'm putting you in the same bucket as Josh Long, that if your demos work, if your code works, go ahead and use the snapshots, right? There's a lot of really cool stuff there, but there's a ton of new capabilities. The patterns that you see in 0.8.1, there's 2 or 3 times as many in the 1.0 snapshot. That is just weeks. We're into weeks, not months. We're just weeks away from.
And features change, like the Vertex Java SDK is also in the 0.8, I think, version. One will be soon out. What is it that enterprises will look for? Is to see that 1.0, and then they will deploy with confidence that this has been vetted.
So what I'm hearing is this is a really good time to get into all of this, whether it's Google Gemini, Spring AI, AI in general. You have not missed the hype train. The hype train's still running along. The real train delivering applications to enterprises is still leaving the station. So it's a good time to get on and learn all of this stuff.
Now is the right time, because if we think about it, last year was the year of training. A lot of models were trained, a lot of information was gathered. People started thinking, what am I going to do with these models? Now this is the year of building. Now I want to use these models, and I have really powerful models. Now it's up to you, me, all of us to now build the application. So yes, nobody has missed the train.
You mentioned earlier in the show the blocking API versus the streaming. And Thomas asked, like, hey, can I get a result of a vector store similarity search as a streaming result while it's still processing and kind of eliminate some of the weight that our user is seeing? Is that possible?
So the user's not really going to see that wait time. The wait time is like, hey, let me get the similarity search, take that list of documents, and now send that off to the LM. That you can get a streaming response back of, but you're not getting a streaming response of the similarity search, I don't think.
When we ask, right, depending, we did an example yesterday on the similarity search, and I think, actually, I don't know if we can do that result as a
you can do the normal like response from the LM as both blocking and streaming.
And streaming is supported by Gemini from the beginning. And not just that, if you run that sample we're just quickly looking at, like function calling, you can see the response being lower than the blocking call.
Nice.
And one of the other things that you kind of touched on, and my head went there, is my understanding was there's some nice integrations where if I've got data in Alloy, my RDBMS, for example, and I want to build a chatbot based on what's there, do I have an easier path?
Yeah, if you're used to writing Postgres and you know how to write an insert or to write a select, to put it in basic form, not JP or anything, yes, you can do that. On the insert side, we could see that it's hidden for you. On the select side, you might want to say, I want, for example, to collect also the PG vector database. I might want to, I might not, but I can leverage my existing data and I can add to it embeddings.
Yeah, the answer here is yes, you can do this. And we've got examples. Join. That's a great question, though. People are wondering, how do we leverage the data that we already have? How do we expose more power and more value of that? And we've been talking about that quite a bit. So Luke is asking, guys, what did I miss? I joined late.
Hey, you can go back, go watch the replay, listen to the podcast. Dan, this was a lot of fun. I think this is a good place we can kind of cut this off. One, where can we find out more about you? And two, where are we going to see you? Are you going to be speaking at any conferences soon?
Well, I'm speaking now with you guys.
Oh, yes.
Then I will be at Spring IO in Barcelona.
Yes. All right.
I will submit an
Are you doing one or two talks in
I have two
Barcelona?
talks there
Two talks
with
okay.
A colleague from Google.
Nice.
We will talk about the future of Java and serverless, explore native and crack in a serverless environment and what the cloud brings, as well as Spring in Kubernetes.
Awesome.
I will see if my talk gets accepted at Spring 1. Enterprises, bringing enterprises to Gen AI. That's going to be, that is the topic. And we want to see how much more we can build from next to Spring 1.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Cool. And then where can we find out more about you?
All the time. I use Twitter for technical content. So here's my handle, Dan Dobrin. You can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, cool. And I'll make sure I get that information in the show notes, as well as a whole bunch of other links that you gave me and some things we talked about during the show. So look for those in the show notes. With that, Dan, again, can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us. I feel like I learned a lot about Google Gemini and the services around there. So I'm interested in diving in a little bit more, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, not only that, I got a great understanding. Right, we talked about a bunch of stuff, and I think I've got some of the gaps filled in just like, what is this bucket of stuff that I need to understand? It helped me as well. Thank you so much.
The wheels are turning. We're going to get this going. So, Dan, thanks a lot.
Happy to see what we're going to build next.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
And I would love to have you back at some point in the future.
I will gladly.
Maybe around Spring 1 in Vegas.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for showing up. Make sure you catch the podcast. And with that, we will see you next week. We have a few really good episodes coming up. We're going to be talking to some of the speakers that are speaking at Spring IO. So we'll go leading up to that conference. I got a few speakers that are getting lined up for that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So with that, happy Monday, everyone. And we will see you in the next one. Take care.